So first, welcome everybody. I want to say thank you to all of our guest speakers for coming tonight. We're super excited to ask you guys some questions and get to know you guys and just kind of hear about like your professional journeys, some advice you have and everything. We're all super excited. You probably just did get an alert that this is going to be recorded. As long as you guys are all okay with that, we do that for to be able to show this to incoming students, to show it to students who couldn't make it tonight, and just for like some social media purposes as well. So as long as you guys are all okay with that, this will be recorded. But yeah, so again, thank you for coming. And I guess without further ado, we'll just get started. I'm Allie, and then the other host tonight will be Kelsey. Um, she's waving. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. So I guess just to start this out, and can you guys each, this is a question for everybody, by the way we'll do this is some questions will be for everybody, and then some questions will specifically address it to like specific people. So this one is for everybody. If you guys just want to take a minute or two, can you each give us like a brief introduction about yourself and your current role within the marketing and communications realm? Anybody can start with that question.
I'll go ahead and get started in 2 minutes. My professional background to this point now, Columbus native, University of Cincinnati graduate business college, non-traditional path into sports, especially on the business side. So coming to Ohio State was what really got me on track. And Ohio State MBA, Ohio State Masters in Sports Management. Thanks to Dr. Turner for staying on me to finish my degree. During the time in the master's program, worked with the Columbus Blue Jackets in sponsorships. So first integration into marketing and on the corporate marketing side versus ticket sales or team marketing. I really got that introduction. Great internship for a season, including some arena football. Joined the Cavs on a summer marketing internship. And went into corporate communications for about 3 years after that marketing internship. From there, really started to enjoy the media side and wanted to have both the business and the sports side. So did basketball communications for 3 years. Got to work a little bit with Matt after knowing each other through school. And that was phenomenal. And then came back to Columbus, joined the Columbus Sports Commission for both marketing and communications. Very big difference of going from 80 full-time staff, Matt, I think we were kind of at, to employee number 7. And then we got to 12 there, but worked on a lot of events from the marketing and communication side, including the Women's Final Four, TBT, the President's Cup, USA versus Mexico in soccer. So great to have the different event perspectives with an NBA franchise and then with a sports host on the city side. And now where I'm currently at, I made a move to take kind of that marketing communications background and add business development. I'm at Wright here in Columbus, sports law practice, atypical that we don't really focus on organizations to be as their legal counsel. We really focus on the individual athlete, which is usually professional or retired, but that is also the transitioning college athlete. And now all college athletes, and even from the high school transitioning athlete, because of name, image, and likeness that's coming. And so we both look to protect and empower the athlete from the legal side and what they're pursuing, but also educate them, hopefully before they need that education through the firm. And so for me, I support the sports law practice as the marketing manager to do everything else that's non-legal. That can be event management, that can be media, that can be from the marketing side, that can also be business development, which I enjoy. And then from anomaly side, that's our educational practice. We work with colleges and pro teams on education where they come in and hire us to provide certain topics of education to help their athletes develop. And so I run every day-to-day operations of that, which includes a ton of marketing and kind of growing a small business and being a part of 2 small businesses. Our law firm is over 150 clients that we've worked with. And then Anomaly within 3 years now has definitely carved out its niche in kind of the student athlete development side. So I enjoy it. It's different and I needed that, but how the marketing plays into the business development, I enjoy both the relationship building and the bridge building, in addition to those times where we need marketing plans, marketing strategies, and marketing materials as well.
I'm happy to jump in real quick. And it does make me smile when Bruce shares how the way that individuals, and you'll learn very quickly, interact and or cross paths. I mean, we're having this discussion and Ben and I worked together and overlapped for Ben probably 5 or 6 years. And Bruce was ultimately someone who came and spoke to a class in a similar form, albeit not electronically in this fashion, in a remote setting, came to a class. Dr. Turner organized an event that we were able to go to a Cavs game. And of course, then I got in his ear and never left him alone. And he's the individual who then created the direct connection that led to my first internship outside of my time in the master's program at OSU, and got me to the Cavs, where I ultimately found a full-time role a few years later. So just to backtrack a bit, though, I had to share that because it just shows the small world that it really is. I went to OSU for undergrad and grad school. I went back to back, but I was a little non-traditional as well, as I was a criminology major in the undergraduate level with a minor in business, and then went through the sport admin program, obviously with Dr. Turner as well, and went straight through. I was a little unique because I didn't identify sport as what I wanted to do right out of the gate, which in hindsight was very silly. That was all I ever really wanted to do. Just didn't realize what a viable option it was for me. So in doing so, completed my undergraduate work because that simply just made sense at that point, and knew I wanted to go straight into the grad program, which afforded me the opportunity to work at the Schottenstein Center in event management, to work in the athletic department a little bit in the athletic communications and marketing offices, and then ultimately with the Ohio High School Athletic Association in Columbus as well in public relations. Directly out of school, in the graduate program, my big capstone internship was with the 76ers in Philadelphia in my dream area of basketball operations. It's not that ever changed. I just knew that there were other things that maybe became a bit more important to me, that led me to want to stay within the Northeast Ohio or greater portion of Ohio footprint. And that led me to the Cavaliers in the internship, literally a year plus after interacting with Bruce. I interned with the Cavs and identified I found a spot for me. But as many of you will learn, that right opportunity doesn't always present itself immediately out of the gate. So after my marketing internship with the Cavaliers, which went extremely well, I wasn't able to secure a role immediately with the Cavs, but I did work for a marketing firm in the region that not so coincidentally handled staffing for the concourse experience at Cavs games. And the entire intention was to stay very, very tight in that space so that I could kind of stay front of mind, maybe for some folks that I was hoping to eventually call colleagues, if that makes sense. And I did work for that company for about a year or so, realized it wasn't necessarily taking me the direction I wanted, and returned to Columbus to work at the convention center, knowing that wasn't probably the forever goal, but it was in event management again, pulling from that Schottenstein Center experience, but knowing that it probably wasn't, again, going to be the fit for me long term. And as fate would have it, my absolute closest friend, who Bruce knows very, very well, ultimately stepped away from the Cavs about 9 months after I got to the convention center. And timing, of course, is everything. And I was able to shift back to Cleveland and ultimately work for the Cavaliers in varying roles in the marketing space for about 6 or 7 years. Phenomenal experience. Love it more than I can even put into words. Great experiences on and off the floor, great friendships and great mentorship and opportunities. I eventually realized that I needed to really expand my experiences. I had not intentional tunnel vision, but I certainly had become very specialized, and I was confident and felt that people certainly appreciated that I could do what it was I was doing, but it became very, very clear to me that I needed to step outside of my comfort zone and take on an opportunity that would allow me to go wide. And when the Kent State opportunity came up, it was a dual role that had marketing and communications experiences. And it's a little non-traditional, as Bruce shared, and it's kind of funny how similar our paths are. I stepped outside of a pure sports role because I technically work on the university side, but not so coincidentally, after about 6 months or so, it became very, very sports centric. So I do sit on the university side kind of as the liaison, using sport as that item, that vehicle that can put Kent State University on someone's doorstep. But ultimately, I invest somewhere in the neighborhood of 99.9% of my time in the sports space. So I become a de facto member of that athletic department, but I do enjoy it every single day, and it's allowed me to go very, very wide. So certainly a very positive experience.
Jump in here. As Matt was just saying, it is kind of funny how small the world is. I don't know if Bruce even remembers this, but I asked Bruce to speak at our Sport and Wellness Scholars program probably 10 years ago, 12, 11 years ago, and took Dr. Turner's undergrad sport marketing class as well about the same time. And then, of course, worked with Matt, as you mentioned. But first of all, thank you for allowing me to do this. And I'm excited to talk to everybody today. But I graduated Ohio State in 2014 with a sports industry major. I did not do the master's program as our two friends here have previously, but I got right into the sports industry. Basically, I wanted to position myself so that I would have a chance to have a job right out of college. And even with all the work that I did in the 4 years that I was at Ohio State, it was still a challenge and had to settle for part-time work. So I understand what everybody's going through and the stressful situation that can put you in. But at Ohio State, I really threw myself into a bunch of different sports opportunities. I knew I wanted to work in sports right away. I just didn't know exactly what discipline within sports I wanted to work within. So in 2010, after my freshman year, I went and did an internship over in Cape Town, South Africa, which was a chance for me to have a differentiating experience. I understand not everybody has the opportunity to travel abroad and do those sort of things, but I think having that, sort of differentiating experience really helped me get my foot in the door later and sort of pays off as these things snowball. I did an internship with the Columbus Clippers, and that's where I really found out that marketing was something that I enjoyed. It was a great internship. Not everything that we did was glamorous. We were stamping hands, scanning tickets, telling people they can't re-enter, a lot of stuff like that. But it was a great internship because it allowed me to rotate through different departments with the team. So then I was able to focus in on the marketing piece, the second half of my undergraduate career. I did an internship with the Columbus Blue Jackets game operations department. Loved it. Came back a second year in the marketing and fan development department. And that's really where my hockey career started. Along the way, I did some guest services stuff for the crew. I was holding the camera at women's basketball games, filming field hockey practices, all sorts of stuff just to build up my resume. And then after all of that, I graduated, got a part-time job with the then Lake Erie Monsters and the Cleveland Gladiators of the Arena Football League, and part of the Cavaliers organization, and being a part of that sort of minor league, those minor league properties, but with affiliation to the Cavs, ended up being a perfect place for me to start my career. And I've liked it so much, I've stayed with the company the past 7 years. So this is my seventh season with the Monsters. I've gone from sort of a part-time seasonal assistant to a coordinator to manager, senior manager, now I'm the director of marketing and communications. And communications part of that is the newer learned part of my job. I really started in marketing, and actually I would bug Matt all the time. I was sort of was doing a lot of the same things he was doing, but on the Monsters side. So that's really where I got my start, and then recently gotten involved on the communications side. But now with our franchise properties, I'm involved with the Canton Charge a little bit. And so it's been a great opportunity to kind of have my hands in a bunch of different areas of our business. And so, yeah, I'm excited to, answer any questions, but thanks.
All right, I'll try and jump in. So I'm probably much younger than the other ones. I graduated from Ohio State in 2018. I interned in the fan experience and promotions department for about 2.5 years at Ohio State. It was just something, I switched my major. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And my sister played hockey at Ohio State, and one of her teammates was like, this is an internship that I'm doing, why don't you give it a shot, see if you like it. I was like, you know what, it can't hurt, it's just something for my resume. Went in there, first day, scared out of my mind, didn't really want to talk to anyone. And, sat there, and our current assistant director at the time, Ethan, he oversaw men's ice hockey, and I played hockey my entire life. And, he's like, if you wanted to have an opportunity to play or have an opportunity to work with him. He's like, just let me know. I was like, absolutely. So he kind of just like threw me into the fire with everything, you know, anything hockey related. He's like, here, you take care of it. It's all you. I don't really want to deal with it. And I was fine with that. So I did that for about 2.5 years. Upon graduating, you know, I was freaking out. You know, I didn't have anything lined up. I knew I wanted to get my master's degree. I just didn't know how that was going to look like in my, you know, kind of my career path. So I applied to probably about 27 different graduate assistant positions, you know, coming out of undergrad. Ultimately got a phone call from Auburn University that, you know, I was going to be a graduate assistant in the marketing department. So went down there for 2 years, oversaw, trying to think, I helped with football, men's basketball, softball, baseball, oddly enough, equestrian. Never thought I'd oversee an equestrian program, but, you know, slight flex, back-to-back national champions while I was there. Pretty cool. But did that for 2 years. And as I was finishing up my second year, obviously a start of the pandemic began, and it's not a great time to be entering the job market. So I was kind of sitting there. I was actually sitting in Florida with my sister, kind of just hanging out with everything on pause, basically. And I got a text message from my boss at Auburn saying, you know, hey, I gave your phone number to a friend at Wake Forest. He's looking for people, you know, he's going to give you a call. You know, I'm sitting on the beach, and I was like, dang it. So literally I'm sprinting up the beach, got in the condo, opened up my laptop, like tried to learn as much as I could about Wake Forest in about 25 minutes. Got on a phone call with Wright here at Wake, you know, had about an hour and a half conversation with them, ultimately got the position. So here I'm currently a marketing and fan experience coordinator. So everything was obviously different because of COVID, but you know, your normal marketing year, you're going through the marketing plan of how you're going to promote your events and all your sports throughout the year. But then we're also in charge of fan experience. So we are the ones doing the game production aspect of everything. So coordinating everything on the video board, music, promotions, which obviously we weren't allowed to have any of those this year. So it's been all that stuff. So here I'm currently with our baseball program, football, men's basketball, as well as helping out with volleyball and field hockey.
Awesome, guys. Thanks everyone for sharing. It was awesome to hear, you know, about all your different backgrounds and how you guys got to where you are today. So as Ali said, we're going to kind of narrow down these questions. So we're going to just focus on 2 people for each question. So this first one is going to be for Ben and Patrick. And is there any piece of advice for those hoping to get into marketing and or communications that you guys wish you would have known sooner?
Yeah, I can start us off here. I think one thing, I was one of those people that wanted to work in marketing. And one of the reasons I did so many internships because I did not want to call people on the phone, cold call people and sell tickets. So I think there's a lot of people that go through, starting their sports career where that's one of their goals is not to work in sales. But what I wish I would have known earlier is just the extent to which, I guess I don't dislike sales. I like being a part of the sales process. And I think I would have benefited from just knowing how much my job now is supporting revenue generation. So everything that we do is still a part of the sales process. The way we see it at the Monsters, if we can get somebody in the door for the first time and create a great experience that first event that they're at, then our job is to put them in the funnel, and our sales team will be able to sell them a package someday, and they'll become a season ticket holder and all these great things. So I think what would have been useful for me is just maybe a little less siloed thinking about the sales world and how really I'm a part of that, and maybe even a better maybe diving in a little more business acumen in terms of what the revenue side of the business looks like, because at the end of the day, at least in professional sports, we're all on the revenue side, whether or not you have sales in your title or not. So I think that was something I didn't necessarily think about too much when I was first starting my career.
I think Ben hit it on the head. Like when I first heard about my internship and I heard marketing, literally I was picturing like I was going to be the one calling people and being like, hey, you want tickets to the men's basketball game this weekend? So I was very hesitant on that part. But, you know, when I got in and kind of realized more of what we're doing is, yeah, it's a lot of the office work of planning, you know, this is how we are going to promote our events, whether it's digital billboards or this is when specific emails are going to be going out targeting people for sales. You know, and then you also have that in-venue aspect. You know, that's kind of something that really got me hooked, was not just the office work, but actually in the venue, and realizing how much of what you do actually does contribute to a fan's experience, because the ultimate goal is to get them, you know, get their butts in the seats. But ultimately, when they are there, you have to show them a great time in order to get them back. So, and it was realizing it's not just, okay, the fan experience isn't just inside your venue. It's not just the music that's playing. It's not just what you play on the video board. It starts from the moment that they get in their car and start making their trip to the arena. Because ultimately, you know, after, you know, I can think specifically with Ohio State football, trying to get out of Columbus after that game is an absolute project and process to try and handle. So, you know, people may sit there and go, oh my God, I had to wait in traffic for an hour. You know, is it really worth going to a game again? So, you know, with marketing, it's not just figuring out how to get them there, but it's just such an overarching department that touches everything when it comes to communications and event management and all those different outlets on how to make that entire attendance and event production the best it can be. Because one bad aspect of everything, whether it's concessions prices or parking, that can be a reason someone never comes to another game. So that was probably the thing that got me the most interested, was understanding how broad and kind of how you touch everything more than you thought you would, and just how it contributes to someone actually coming back and actually being, you know, a lifelong fan or a season ticket holder. So just understanding you're not just making those phone calls, you're not just sitting at a table talking to people on the concourse. It's everything that goes on for a game day from the start to the end.
Yeah, and if I can just add real quick, I think one thing that, like when I was in your guys' shoes, you think you have to know all this stuff, it's marketing, and really just as important about what you know is you're just being a good teammate and being somebody that your coworkers want to be around. I think that's an underrated part of being successful in the sports industry. You spend so much time with the people you work with. At the end of the day, it's what we're doing is not rocket science. There's a science to it, but it's not the most technical thing in the world. And it's helpful to just be a good teammate and somebody that, you know, the people around you trust are going to have your back and work hard with you, because it's not the most glamorous thing all the time. But as long as you know your coworkers are in that, you know, they have your back and they're in there with you, I think that's as important as what you know.
Yeah, well, that's great advice from all of you. I feel like a lot of us young people kind of think that way about sales. So definitely thank you for that. This next question we have is for Bruce and Patrick. And, you know, this year has obviously been hard for, you know, a bunch of industries, but especially the sports industry. So how has COVID-19 impacted your current role, and how has it, in your opinion, affected the whole world of marketing and communications?
I'll go ahead and start, and it's actually in two ways. So if you have kind of the sports law practice, and then you have anomaly as the educational practice. COVID's impact, there was good things that we could take away from it, and I think we've made the most of it. Maybe that's the best way to say it. On the sports law practice, it was a big boost because professional athletes were in off-season mode for a lot longer than they normally are. And as you can imagine, athlete relations, they're not always the easiest group of people to get meetings with, catch their attention, hold their attention for. But we do a lot of work with their advisors. So a lot of the marketing that we do for the sports law practice is, of course, to athletes through relationships, through family members, of course, but it's not, a lot of it's through advisors, where those professional service providers that they have already on their team, understand that, okay, I'm the agent. I need a lawyer who's not an agent to help me with a certain project. So I need to call Porter Wright. And so that was happening a lot more often because the athletes were in off-season mode. So for a little while, the marketing didn't have to continue of building those relationships with the advisors or otherwise, but a lot of business was coming in because the athletes had time to do these meetings, to focus on things that they wanted to pursue in business, whether that's investing in a business, starting their own business, charitable work, all of those type of things, estate planning. They had the time. And so it was great to be a part of that. I would say at least on a monthly basis, the number of clients, if you say it's maybe 3 a month, are new clients in addition to, current client work. That number probably doubled on average for last summer, from the spring into the summer. On the educational side, where we rely on teams and schools and the teams within those athletic departments to hire us to come in and speak on decision-making or networking, name, image, and likeness, all of those professional things beyond their sport, that came to a screeching halt. Priorities were the mental health of the student athletes, their academic, staying physically ready, all of those other things, being at home, just everything else of having speakers and professional development. It was a 4th or 5th priority. And so we understood it. But where we made the most of it is with name, image, and likeness coming and people not understanding what it really was going to look like. There was so much focus on brand building and commercialization opportunities for the student athletes. They didn't understand this other business protective education side of the athletes are going to be in business. And there's so many things that all of our respective organizations and universities have that the student athlete is going to be out there as kind of their own CEO if they want to be. What are those things when it comes to business decision-making and name, image, and likeness? What is it for due diligence of advisors if you decide to use them? The actual opportunity, is it right for you? How do you want to get into this process? Business financial management. So if there's personal financial literacy, if there is, personal financial management, and how do you apply that literacy? How do you take that to the next level and shift to business financial management? And then there's an understanding of contracts. Of many of your name, image, and likeness opportunities are going to come in a form of an agreement, a memorandum of understanding, or a contract, and you've got to review those and have a foundational understanding. So the pause allowed us to do our own webinars and really share with a lot of schools what this other side of name, image, and likeness needs to be, regardless of what the model is. You have to give student athletes the defense to go out there to match the offense that they have through brand building, social media, and entrepreneurship. So that time allowed us to tell our story, show our value in our work. It took a tremendous amount of marketing, again, to put the webinars together, the graphics, PowerPoint decks, things like that, in addition to still marketing ourselves to school executives like Matt to, hey, come listen to this webinar on image and likeness. We're a great resource, but it's probably a resource that you're not thinking much about right now. So wasn't easy, wasn't too difficult, because we believed in what we do and we know the value of it. And as people heard it, they understood the other side of name, image, and likeness and helping student athletes protect themselves while pursuing business opportunities. So hopefully that helps with kind of how we dealt with the pandemic, but I do think we've made the most of it with this kind of pause and working from home a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the main way it kind of affected us was, I mean, once again, our job is to get people to events, and it's very difficult when you're not allowed to have people. So obviously, we still had our events. We were still, putting on, basically a pretty bare bones production when it came to a football game or anything like that, because all we were really allowed in the stadium were player guests and families. Eventually, it did start to open up a little bit more in the state of North Carolina, where we were starting to get some students. And, you know, later on, we were able to open up to a certain amount of sales. But I mean, the main thing was we were looking at, you know, we lost our entire way of making revenue with ticket sales being completely gone. So, you know, we had to come in and we really needed to think, you know, how are we going to start making that revenue? Because, you know, we already had staff members go on furlough. We had people who were, you know, taking the voluntary retirement package, you know, that, you know, the athletic department was offering to try and, you know, just try and get out when things, you know, looked like they weren't getting much better. So, you know, a lot of teams were doing the fan cutouts, you know, obviously we kind of hopped on that kind of helped us. I think in sales, we were around currently $80,000 when it comes to that, you know, so that definitely helps a little bit, but it was really just thinking, how are you going to continue to provide a product when you're not allowed to actually come and see the product on the field? So the biggest thing that, you know, coming into Wake Forest, you know, I sat down with my boss, Wright, and we were just talking, you know, this year, you know, while everyone understands there's a pandemic going on and we can't have fans in the stadium, going into next year, that's going to be the true test, because how do you sit there in this entire year where you were sitting on the couch watching a football game or watching a basketball game? You know, you got stuff that you really don't get when you actually go to an event. You don't have to deal with parking. You get whatever food and drinks you want. You get amazing replays and commentary from the TV. How are you going to sit there and still get people to come back into the future? Because how do you sit there and say, you know, yeah, we have this going on in stadium, but, you know, you had all this other stuff that you probably enjoyed a little bit more at home. So really trying to make them, you know, kind of have that FOMO, you know, make them feel like they are missing out on a lot. So, you know, one thing that we did offer to our fan base was, it was called the Deacon Virtual Season Ticket. And it was basically, it was an app that we launched with FanMaker, and it was, you purchased just like a ticket. It just gave you access to a bunch of videos and insight to the actual football program throughout the season that you would never actually get. You know, you were getting to see Coach Clausen in the locker room talking to the team before the game. You were able to see practice videos. You were able to see exclusive hype videos that our creative services team made. Gave you access to the pregame show. So it was just providing something that we didn't normally do in the past, just as a way to make you feel like, you know, man, I really am missing out. I do miss being at Truist Field. I want to go and see football in the future. So you're not, you know, next season comes around, they go, you know, I saved a lot of money. I didn't have to pay for parking. I didn't have to pay for concessions. I didn't have to pay for tickets. Everything was just as great. So that was the biggest thing was, you know, how are we going to make you come back into the future and not feel like, oh, I didn't really miss out on much.
Thank you both for sharing all of that. I know that the COVID-19 pandemic obviously was something that none of us saw coming or none of us expected. So I think that was one of our more, I guess, intriguing questions, just because it was something none of us saw coming. So it's just interesting to see how different areas of the sports industry have dealt with that. But so for our next question, this is for Matt and Bruce. And it is there like an experience that you guys have had within your career that stands out to you as like extremely defining or monumental, or something that just really sticks with you in your career?
I'll hop in. It won't be a surprise, but anytime you go through the ups and downs, so to speak, of a team's performance on the floor, anyone who tells you professionally that doesn't have an impact on you, it's not that they're lying, it's just it affects different people in different ways. And I think it affects everyone to some extent. So I had a little bit of a strange career with the Cavaliers, because every single season I was with the Cavs, we either were a lottery team who didn't make the playoffs and hoped to receive the number one pick in the draft, and as crazy as it sounds, received that number one pick 3 of the 4 years I was there, which is outrageous to this day. So that was one portion of my career. And the other portion was going to the NBA Finals. So that's not normal in any way to have your career kind of split up and have the highs and lows, so to speak. But what I will tell you is, without question, the high was ultimately winning a championship. But it wasn't necessarily for the reasons that you would assume. I will tell you, winning a championship meant a great deal of work to get there, from a business side, of course, and ultimately from an execution side with what was to follow. The career defining moment wasn't necessarily winning the championship. It's kind of that long view of what you experienced along the way in that particular run. Because those playoff runs can become very chaotic. Ben knows, Bruce knows it. It's every other night. And by the time we got to that point, it was literally every other night, because if you weren't hosting a home game, you were hosting a watch party, and you're literally all hands on deck, toting 20,000 t-shirts all over the place, light up sticks, bracelets, you name it, it was something moving. So it's taxing on you. And what I will tell you, though, is when the realization set in as to what had happened at the end of that parade, it was the professional side that actually hit me, not the personal fan side. Because so many of us, who work in sport at some point called ourselves athletes, right? And like in many cases, Bruce knows from our morning basketball runs, we'd like to still think we're athletes, right? But generally speaking, this is usually your outlet to what you did for fun, what you previously enjoyed most. And what I've always truly believed, and the reason I would call it a career defining moment, is even if it's that small little sliver of the process, you are a part of that organization and you are a part of that team. And so when you can reach that moment that's that special, your pride isn't just built as a fan. It's that payoff that you've always hoped for in your professional work life, where you now feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself. And it might sound cheesy, and Ben will remember from my days, and we've done interviews and such together, so he knows I say this, but I genuinely mean it. The reason I enjoy the industry is because I feel like I'm some part of something bigger than myself. And at that particular moment in time, it felt as though, on a personal level, something was achieved that was so team-centric, and it created a great deal of pride. It created an opportunity where I felt like I was a part of something that I might not have felt, that I, on a personal level, not right or wrong, but I, on a personal level, might not have felt the same way from a fan perspective as I did as an employee. And it created such a sense of pride that it's cliche to talk about it. It's not surprising to any of you, but the way that it kind of resonated was a little different than I would have ever expected until I started to gain that appreciation of being a part of an organization. And as Ben said so eloquently, being a part of that team, being a good teammate, and working in tandem with people who you're with a great deal, oftentimes a little more than your family. So that's definitely the number one item for me, for sure.
Yeah, I would, especially in a marketing context, I would say it's the 2018 Women's Final Four, hosted in Columbus, still considered to be one of the best ever, if not the best ever. And sports commission life, if you're not familiar with it, there aren't too many events that you have an actual large marketing and advertising budget to spend locally or nationally. The Women's Final Four was one of those events where we did, but it's still one of those events where you also needed to do the marketing that we specialized in at the Sports Commission, which was community and grassroots marketing. And so to be a part of those grassroots marketing plans of how do you get ticket sales information into the community where everybody kind of thinks, oh, the Women's Final Four is coming to Columbus, it's going to sell out. And we as local residents don't have access to those tickets. How do you combat that? And then how do you, with money being spent elsewhere for advertising, how do you find those community marketing assets, the electronic and digital billboards, downtown in the community, flyers with Columbus Recreation and Parks, the city's website? Like, how do you get information into so many people's websites, the Columbus Partnership on the corporate side? I enjoyed that the most because it stretched us at a time where we had resources. But in order for the event to be successful, we needed to utilize those resources from an ads standpoint, but also still need the community resources that we've had to use for so many other events to be successful in Columbus. And it came together. And by that time, the Sports Commission, we were a staff of 12, maybe 13. And I had kind of shifted to the media side, but it was only after really helping with the marketing side to use all those civic and community marketing assets that we had, that the NCAA shared with us. We don't get this type of collaboration from many other cities where you have all of these assets that you're connected to, and from your other work on other events, they're ready made for when the Women's Final Four gets there. But to use them, to see them work, to sell out the building where people didn't think we would in a larger venue than it's normally there for the women's Final Four. And then for the games just to be the way they were, it was just the perfect reward for such a strong marketing and communications plan. So for me, definitely could go to the Cavs. I was on the media side and corporate communications, so I worked with the marketing department on all their highlights. But the hands-on work for the women's Final Four was definitely from a marketing side. I think my biggest accomplishment that I was a part of.
Thank you both. I always like hearing people's stories about like their greatest achievements or their favorite memory of their job. I just think, I mean, I know it makes me excited for the future, so I think everybody can say the same thing. This next question will honestly probably be our last one. It is specifically for Ben and Matt, but since it is our last one, if anyone hears something that they want to jump in and quick add something, you're more than welcome to. But we just wanted to ask if there are any specific experiences or opportunities that you would recommend to those interested in building a career in marketing or communications.
I would say if you can find something that allows you to sort of experiment within an organization, like I was saying with my Blue Jackets internship, or sorry, my Clippers internship, that's really valuable. So that you're going in and you're having a little taste of a bunch of different things and before you're fully committed. And so I think maybe something that's maybe a little broader than you would have sought out initially. I'm biased here, but I would definitely advocate for minor league sports to start your career. I understand sometimes there's a desire to, you want to work for the team that's playing on ESPN, or you want to wear the polo that's got the logo that all your friends recognize. But the experience that you get in minor league sports is really valuable. And oftentimes, like, situation that I'm in here, you're able to get sort of the best of both worlds, where you can be exposed to that world and have some of the same leadership team or some of the same resources while still having that experience that allows you to grow a little faster. So I think I owe a lot of my growth early in my career to the fact that I stuck on the franchise property side. And there were definitely times where I, thought about, do I really want to be doing this and working Gladiators games and Monsters games at the same time and all of these different things, or do I want to go focus all my attention on an NBA team or an NHL team? And really it just came down to growth opportunity for me. So I would say don't shy away from those experiences that are a little more broad and allow you to kind of explore within the job. And then don't shy away from minor league sports or some of the smaller organizations that can offer you a great experience.
I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record, but Ben is incredibly on point here, because I think the biggest piece of advice I could give is look for an opportunity that almost automatically takes you outside of your comfort zone. Because there's a really good chance that the position that takes you outside of your comfort zone is going to give you a more wide-ranging experience that maybe to you, you might assume that it might not be quite as flashy on paper, when in reality, that's not true at all. Those that work within the industry can identify individuals who've worked in minor league athletics, who've worked at smaller universities, whatever the case may be. They already have like a feather in their cap, so to speak, because individuals in the industry realized how non-specialized, and by non-specialized, I mean that in a good way, that an individual might have in terms of their experiences. It's almost as though when you go into a role that might be outside of the obvious, marketing intern for name your professional property, or marketing intern for name your well-known university or entity. If you can, it's not that you want to stay clear of those opportunities. If it presents itself, by all means, it's a no-brainer, of course. But what I'm suggesting is take your search, go a bit wider, because what experiences you grab are ultimately going to be the selling points that you're going to utilize wherever you go. So I'll get a little bit more specific. It's not just the organizations you work for, it's the roles. I knew for a fact that marketing and/or communications was the right fit for me if I wasn't going to work in the player personnel side, which was my true, dream of all dreams, so to speak. But the reality is, any role you take on, whether it's facilities, whether it's anything out there that might not look as glamorous to you, it's all about taking that experience and using it as an opportunity, not only to network within when you're there, but taking experiences along the way within that particular role and then using it to sell yourself later. It is a bit comical. You don't really know it when it happens, but if you would have explained to me that my time at the Schottenstein Center would lead to my second full-time job, albeit for a short stint at the convention center, by selling the fact that I had experienced, all of these different ins and outs of how to, work within the facility setting. I would have called you crazy. But my point is, when I turned around then and came back to the Cavaliers in a traditional role that made a lot of sense for me, I spent half of my interview talking about what respect and understanding I had for each and everything that went into the facility plan to allow each and every one of our events to occur. So I kept turning it on its head and trying to use each experience I had to try and sell myself for a future experience. And you'd be surprised, as long as you're willing to be a sponge and absorb everything you can, go wide. See what opportunities are out there. There's going to be a chance, if you work hard, to kind of utilize those skill sets you've developed, and quite frankly, talk about the positive experiences you've had to help sell yourself for a future experience. And I'll just tie a bow on it. You just don't know where connections are going to come, and you just don't know what experience you're going to find yourself smiling in a future interview, because now you have that perfect point of feedback to share why you're the right candidate for your dream role, or a role that more clearly aligns with what you're hoping to do. So just think wide is all I would say.
Yeah, and if you're someone who aspires to a leadership position within your organization, it's not always going to be how you performed in your specialized role. Sometimes they're looking for more general knowledge. I feel like I'm not, I'm sort of a master of none. I don't necessarily have one area where I would consider myself an expert, but through my experiences, I've gained a lot of different knowledge, a little bit about a lot of different things. And I think those sometimes end up being the people who grow within organizations, because they can relate to a wider array of people within your organization. They're not so pigeonholed. So I'm agreeing with Matt as well, but yeah, I would encourage to sort of think outside the scope of what you're necessarily studying, or what your teamwork online search words might be,
And I'll kind of touch on it real quick. I think Matt hit it right on the head in the end. Was those connections are so important in sports. Like, yeah, there are so many different leagues and so many different teams and universities, out there, but it is such a small industry. Like, you are 1 or 2 phone calls away from knowing someone at a different school that you're looking at, or a different team. Like, everyone knows everyone, or if they don't, they know someone who does know that person. I knew no one in the ACC when I, from my time prior here. I only knew people in the Big Ten and the SEC from the 2 years that I was down there. And all of a sudden, once again, my boss here worked at Mississippi State for 12 years before he left for Wake Forest. And he was just really good friends with my boss at Auburn. And once again, when everything shut down, it was one phone call that Dan knew I was looking for something, and he knew someone that was looking for a position. So, like, I can't even stress the importance of, when it comes to your connections and your networking, of being able to branch out. Like, yeah, it may not be the most comfortable thing, but, hopping on, stuff like this, where you're just talking to a panel or listening, you're building that network, and people are able to, know who you are, or know someone that knows of you, and they're able to get, a good background check of, what are they about? How are they like in an office setting? Do they want to do this, or is it just something, are they just there for something to pad a resume? So, Matt touched on that. That is so important, especially when you have, I remember at Auburn, I was one of 30, or at Ohio State, I was one of 30 interns. All those other kids wanted to do what I'm doing right now, but when it comes down to being a job reference, who's your boss going to stick up for because of what you've done for them? And they're going to put their neck out for you. And that's ultimately what's going to give you a chance to make that next step, and how I've ultimately got from being an intern at Ohio State to now being a marketing coordinator here at Wake Forest.
Awesome, you guys. Thank you all for that. I think it's definitely hard to, as young professionals, get out of that comfort zone. But I think that great things always happen when we do get out of that comfort zone, make those connections like you were all saying. So I think that's all we have for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for your time. I know everyone here benefited from all the advice given tonight, and we'll definitely get this out to the students who couldn't make it in on our social media. So thanks again, and go Bucks.
Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.
Go Bucks. Thank you.
Good luck. Have a good one.
Take care, guys.